KMPLX Fitness. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, so today we're going to go through how to program mass runs, so maximal aerobic speed, and we're going to look at it step by step. So a lot of people just kind of get onto the pitch and they'll run for 15 seconds, rest for 15 seconds, and they'll do that for 4 minutes, which is 8 reps, and they'll do 3 to 4 sets, whichever, but there'll be no real plan involved. It will just be run for 15, rest for 15. And what you might notice is, if you've ever seen people in your club do this or ever done it yourself or witnessed people do it, is that the distance fluctuates. So maybe you'd hit it really, really far the first time, and then it slowly starts to come down, and you're just really running under fatigue then. What we're going to do now is just go through how we can approach this intelligently and not just randomly. So we're going to go through understanding the goal, how to program yourself, progression, and then the retest if that's something you're into. So moving on to the next slide, just some notes to make before we start. So this is a program or a running program that is performed 1 to 2 times a week. I personally prefer to do it 1 time a week, and I prefer to draw it out over the course of 8 weeks or more, just because it's quite fatiguing. But on top of that, I like to train other methods as well, like distance running, intervals, and things like that. And if you're doing this twice a week, you don't really want to be running hard 2 other days a week, or putting yourself into hard intervals or long distances or other things. You want to recover between these sessions. So it is, if you're doing it 2 times a week, spread them out: a Monday to a Thursday, a Tuesday to a Friday. Get those 72 hours between them, because they are fatiguing. The blocks range from 2 to 4 weeks depending on your frequency. So by frequency, I mean, are you doing it 1 time a week? Are you doing it 2 times a week? It also ranges on your own ability and your own progression. Everyone's going to progress differently. I am going to go through an example of how to program it over the span of 8 weeks, and then over the span of 6 weeks maybe. But the matter of the fact is, everyone's going to be different. Your progression is going to be different than the next guy's. So the work to rest ratio is the most important part of your mass runs. It's 1-to-1, and that goes for anything. So it can be 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, minute on, minute off, 45 seconds on, 45 seconds off. In GA, we do tend to use 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. And it's probably the smartest thing to do, as we are considering a lot of things in there: the average speed of the player, the average player, the length of the pitch, and how much ground you can cover in 15 seconds is realistic. So it's best to just keep the 15-second method for this. On top of that, the sets are over fairly quickly, and it's nice and fast. I would be performing this on a pitch. If I've given it to someone, they would be performing it on a pitch, especially if you wanted to translate over to GA. Even for myself, between testing a 1 kilometer run on a track and on a pitch, there's a lot of time in the difference, so it doesn't translate fully over. Make sure we're translating it properly, so do it on the pitch. Next slide we're looking at the steps. So the first thing is to perform a 5-minute test and track the distance. Very simple. If you have a watch, or if you know the distance of the pitch or the parameter of the pitch, just go through that. Let's say we'll go through an example. Let's say we get 1.5 kilometers of a distance, which is a very good score, by the way. I picked it because it's easy for the sums. So you get 1,500 meters. What we do is we translate the 5 minutes into seconds, which gives us 300 seconds. So that's converted over. We divide our 1,500 meters by 300 seconds, and you'll get a pace of 5 meters per second. Now, your max aerobic speed at the moment over 5 minutes is currently 5 meters per second, as shown in the sum. The goal is to run over that pace for the interval. So you don't want... the thing is, without this plan in place, you might run over it, you might run under it, you might run it. It fluctuates throughout the runs. So you really do need to test it to see where you're at, and then pick your pace from there. So the goal is to run over that pace for every run on the interval. So on to the next slide. Keep this goal alive, run over 100%. So 5 meters per second is my 100% at the moment. So I start off at 110%. Some people start off at 105. I'd rather start at 110, bring down the sets and reps to begin. So 110% multiplied by 5 meters per second is going to give me 5.5 meters per second. We'll be running for 15 seconds per interval. So this is where the 15 seconds bit comes in. Is quite important. You multiply 15 seconds by 5.5 meters per second to get your distance of 82.5 meters. So the goal is to run 82.5 meters per 15-second run. It's as simple as that. if you can go 80 meters or go somewhere around it, as long as it's over your 5 meter per second. That's pretty much where you want to be. So just going over the sets and reps. So one set usually has 6 to 10 reps, so 3 to 5 minutes. One rep is 30 seconds long. One rep is the 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. So if you do this for 6 reps, 3 minutes, you're only going to be working for 1.5 minutes there. So that's important to note. So the next page we're going on to is what next. So pick your frequency 1 to 2 times a week. Example A, I'm just going to go over. The example here I'm just going to go over is 1 time a week. So this is the way I would like to do it. I'd like to do it over a broad period of time, train other things at the same time, especially in the off season. And I'd like to just do it for the 8 weeks, maybe retest it and forget about it. So this is why I like this method. So week 1 to 2, 3 sets of 8 reps, rest 2 to 3 minutes between sets. I'd usually say rest 3, unless you can see your heart rate come down with a heart rate monitor or something, and you know you're good to go again in 2 minutes. I wouldn't be going again in 2, I'd be going again in 3 minutes. So weeks 3 to 4, it's just 3 sets of 10 reps. So we're just adding 2 reps to each set there. So just adding 2 reps. Then on the next 2 weeks, we come back down to 4 sets of 8 reps. And then the last 2 weeks, back up to 4 sets of 10 reps. So it goes 8, 10, 8, 10. And the sets rise every 4 weeks. So if you don't make any runs, what do you do? Well, let's say you make the runs in week 4, you're moving on to week 5, 4 sets of 8 reps, and you do not make the last 2 runs, you do not move on. So repeat that in week 6 and week 7 again before you move on to the next 4x10. So it's important to hit those runs twice before you move on here. That's the whole point of doing it every 2 weeks. Or that's the whole point of doing it once a week. That every 2 weeks we'd like to progress where we're going. So if you don't make any runs, repeat the week. Then the next example is 2 times a week. So 2 times a week is a little bit different. This is assuming you're not doing that much more running. And if you are, it's fairly low intensity. So week 1, 3 sets of 6 reps. Because you're going to be doing it twice a week, I'm bringing down the reps from 8 to 6. It's the same kind of thing, except the progress is faster because you're doing the runs twice a week. So you can move on from week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see it moves up pretty much every week. And week 3, I have an option of 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps. That's just kind of seeing how you're feeling. If you just about make the 6 reps, cut it off there. If you can make the 8, make the 8. If you make the 8 reps on week 3, on week 4, you can repeat that, or you could move up yourself to either 3x10 or 4x10. Now, this is dragging it out. A lot of people make quicker jumps than this. A lot of people start week 1 on 3 sets of 8 reps, and they might go to 3x10, and then they might go to 4x10. And after week 3, they might be hitting it. So this is going to be completely different for everyone. You kind of have to go off your own feeling. Again, if you don't make any of the runs, repeat that week. So the goal is always to get to that 4 sets of 10 reps. That's always the goal. And I feel once you get there, there is going to be a certain point of diminishing returns. You don't really want to go that much further than that. Again, because it is fatiguing and you've kind of drawn as much out of that pace as you could. So if you hit 4x10, you're doing well. It's time to move on. So if you've made this mark in 3 to 4 weeks of running and you still have more time and you want to improve your mass running, I would repeat the same thing at the beginning at 120%. So that's your 5 meters per second multiplied by 120%, multiply that by 15 seconds. I wouldn't move further than 125 or to 130%. And at 130%, the max runs I would do are probably 4x6 reps for most people. Obviously, if you can get to 4x8, 4x10, that's brilliant. But for most people, it's going to be 4x6. So again, your first block might only be 3 to 4 weeks, and you might be able to do 4x10 at the 110%. That's when it is time to move on. That means there's more you can get out of this. So move on to your 120 or your 115% or whichever. Just move above the 110% pace. When you're finished and when you're ready to finish and you think you've gotten everything you can out of your mass runs, that's when you retest and see, can you beat the 1500 meters that you got in 5 minutes. And my recommendation would be no more than 8 weeks of this. I mean, if you have a long preseason like we've had, it probably would be fine to go above 8 weeks. But I would be a fan of just drawing it out, doing other runs as well included, and then retesting and making sure you're getting better than that initial score of 1500 meters. And that's pretty much everything to do with mass runs, just wrapped up into one simple video.
KMPLX Fitness. Ba-da-da-da-da-da.